Religion. Okay, so I'm Jewish. I don't know how much you already know about Judaism, but there's a lot of information out there. You can easily find some explanation about it. I said I'd like to clarify 2 points. One is I said that I'm from Israel, so I'm obviously Jewish. That's not true. If you're from Israel, you could be Muslim, you could be Jewish, you could be Christian, you could be Buddhist, you could be a lot of different things. The main population, about 6 million people there, are Jewish or identify as Jewish, not necessarily religious. That's the second thing. I said, if you don't know anything about Judaism, what it means, it doesn't mean anything. What I meant was Judaism is a religion, a belief in one all powerful being that controls everything, knows everything, and guides everything. And I personally don't believe in that understanding of the world. I'm not against it. I won't, I'm just, that's not part of my life. But I grew up in Israel where the tradition was Judaism, and I identify as Jewish. I also grew up learning a lot about the Holocaust, World War II, and even before the Holocaust, and the way people understand Jews as being a certain thing. If somebody like Hitler were alive and doing what Hitler did, I would be taken away, I guess, and all of that stuff. So I identify culturally, I identify historically, and that's what that means to me. I've had people talk to me about Israel in a very negative way, like Jews are doing A, B, C, Muslims are doing A, B, and C. Personally, I don't agree with that way of thinking about things. I don't believe that the Muslim religion is a religion of hate. I think, like all religions, it comes from a place of love, a place of caring, trying to figure life out, trying to find the best way to deal with other people. And from what I've read from the Quran and what I understand about Muhammad the Prophet, he was not all about killing people. It just wasn't. The whole idea of guns and murder is just one one way of looking at something and changing that thing to fit the way you want to see it. And the people who do that, they're doing it very violently. And because they're doing it violently, they sound much louder than everybody else. I think the Muslim tradition, the Muslim religion, is just as beautiful as Judaism, just as beautiful as Christianity. Everybody wants, everybody can believe in their, it has nothing to do with proof. It has nothing to do with anything but believing something. So you believe this to be the truth, and that's your way of seeing the world. All right, I'm fine with that. What I'm not fine with is uh, when people choose to accept prejudice as truth. For example, in Korea, I've often been told when I tell people I'm Jewish, they say, oh, you must be rich and smart. And I say, please don't say that. That's not okay. Even positive things are still prejudiced and just have nothing to do with reality. Reality and prejudice, they seem connected, but they're not connected. It's like saying all Koreans smell like garlic. They don't. And thinking that doesn't make you sound smart. It just doesn't. Sorry. Okay. I'm just telling you. Prejudice is a tool people use to make sense of the world. That's fine. When they talk to people of similar way of thinking, they can use prejudice as a way of just short argument, right? You can just say, well, Jews do this, and that's your way of shortening the argument. if you're talking to people who believe the same thing as you, it's great, it's shorthand, it's easy. But when you're talking to other people who may not see the world the same way as you, using those prejudice as a shortcut is just, it's not valuable, it's not smart, and it can be really hurtful, especially when those prejudices are negative. Just think about that. You're using prejudice as a shorthand to make a certain argument. You must be rich, so if you think I'm rich, doesn't that mean that you want me to buy you the coffee? Like, I just saying, you're Jewish, you must be rich. Well, that changes our relationship in a negative way, I think, because I don't want you to think of me as rich or poor. I just want you to think of me as someone who's talking to you, or we either agree about things or we disagree about things, or agree about some, disagree about others. That's also fair. Just think about it, how that may change your relationship to somebody. And religion as a sensitive topic, why? Why is religion a sensitive topic? For example, when I say stuff about Judaism, I feel like I have to explain the history of it. When I talk to people about Israel, they feel very strongly about how Israelis deal with the Muslims. The problem is all Israelis don't feel the same way about Muslims. All Muslims don't feel the same way about Israelis. It's not one people fighting another people. That's first of all. Second of all, we're all Semites. If you believe in race, which you might or you might not, the race that Jews come under is called Semite. That's why it's anti-Semitic against Jews, but also against all Semites, including Arabs. We're all in the same family. So if you're an anti-Semite, you're against Jews, Arabs, Muslims, and all the tribes that are in between there. So race has led to very little positive things. I don't think the African people that were forcefully brought over to America and sold as slaves, I don't think their life is that great, even today. I feel like a lot of skin color has caused prejudice and hate amongst people. These days, it's not as open. We don't just say, I don't like you because you're black or because you're Jewish, but it's still there. And there's a reason for that. Probably has to do with psychology. Much more connected to psychology than probably anything else. And that's okay too. I'm not solving the world's problems. Just remember, if you are Asian and you make comments about Latinos or African Americans, you should be very careful. You are also not considered a majority, you're considered a minority in America. So just remember that you're part of it. You're not separated from it. And that's how I feel about Muslims and Jews. I feel like we're together. On some level, we're all together. In Israel, I also feel like we're all together in a very small space, sharing the same water supply, and there's going to be fighting, there's going to be misunderstanding, and there's going to be problems. When there's people, there's going to be problems. Remember, some of the people in Israel live a life of comfort, and a lot of people in Israel who don't live a life of comfort are Arabs, and that's a problem. Is it your problem? Probably not. Remember, many parts of the world are now experiencing war, starvation, sickness, hunger, tragedy. All of those things are happening around us, and we don't do anything because it's not connected to us in an emotional, personal way. And that's also psychology. If it was there for you to see, you might deal with it more than when it's not there for you to see. I'm not talking to you. I'm not trying to say you should feel guilty. I'm not trying to say you should change the way you live. I'm just saying sensitive issues are sensitive for a reason. Personal experience changes people. If you've been through a war and you've come out of it and you're living in Korea now, you feel differently about everyday life than if you've never experienced hunger a single day in your life. You just feel differently about it. I've lost friends to suicide bombers, and I still don't hate Muslims. I don't hate Arabs. I don't hate Israeli Arabs. I don't hate Israeli Muslims. I don't think about it that way because even a loss of a life is, it's just, I don't, I can't think of people in such a general way. Like, I don't imagine them sitting there and hating me personally or hating Jews. I just don't believe that. I think that has a lot to do with the way the media wants the world to see the situation. And also, it gets a lot of attention that way. Remember, if there's no attention, there's no support, there's no aid. So attention is not necessarily bad, but you don't always get all the information. You certainly don't get different perspectives. I have a lot of opinions about religion and Israel. And if you would like to hear more, that's fine. Ask me a question. It's a sensitive topic. You should be practicing how to talk about sensitive topics. Remember, for me, Israel and religion, but for you, it could be gender, it could be sexuality. You know, in Korea, there are no gay people. I've been told there are no gay people, but there are. Just so you know, I know there are. There are gay people everywhere, in every country, in every community, and you either deal with it or you ignore it. Korea, no? So, just my point is, you may see Judaism, Israel is not sensitive for you, you have no personal connection. But you may know someone who has killed themselves. You may know old people who are not happy or not being treated right. You may know children who are having a hard time because their psychological needs are not being dealt with because Koreans don't deal with Anyway, another sensitive issue. You may know people who are in debt, horrible debt they can't get out of. You may know people who are gay and have to hide it. You may be in a position where you're sent to a different country and you experience racism. A lot of sensitive issues. How do you talk about it without crying? And how do you learn about sensitive issues? Remember, we don't usually, polite society, we don't talk about those things, but how can you learn about it if you don't talk about it? Think about it. So, for now, let's just finish this class by saying, think about a personal issue or a sensitive issue that you have a personal relationship with. Like my explanation about Jews and Israel and that complexity, pick one point you want to talk about that issue and make a video like mine and try not to cry if you can, and use the reading and the homework to help you figure out the best way to talk about that point. All right, guys, try, make mistakes, and keep going.